When Elon Musk took over Twitter, the internet predicted its swift demise. But Twitter, now known as X, is still trucking along with 600 million users and 6.1 billion visits per month. So what happened? Well, here is the full, utterly bonkers story of what Elon did next and whether X ended up better or worse. And stick around to the end of the video where I'll share the 3 essential takeaways that you can 100% apply to your own work. Now, Elon Musk's involvement with Twitter dates back to early 2022, when Elon had already acquired a 9.2% stake in the company, thus becoming the largest stakeholder at that particular time.
Like you pointed out, Tesla founder and CEO Elon Musk just disclosed the purchase of over 73 million shares of Twitter. That makes him a 9.2% owner of Twitter, to be very precise here. It also makes him the single biggest shareholder of the company, even bigger than some of the biggest mutual fund and exchange-traded fund investors in Twitter.
On April the 14th, 2022, Elon announced a preliminary offer to take Twitter private at $44 billion. And this snowballed into months of legal wrangling and controversies. But the acquisition was ultimately completed on October the 27th, 2022, ushering in a new era for the platform. Elon's vision was a rebranded Twitter, known as X, an everything app in the mold of WeChat from China. His vision went way, way beyond social media, with a wide breadth of services such as payments, e-commerce, and other utilities combined to create a one-stop shop for digital activities. Now, the acquisition hit hard on Twitter's workforce. Elon sacked several high-profile executives such as CEO Parag Agrawal and CFO Ned Siegel, and about half of Twitter's 7,500 employees. The internet erupted with outrage, especially the canning of so many staff and the methods in which these staff were let go. But the economics were clear to Elon. X had to tighten its belt if it was going to survive. Now, I'm going to be honest, and you might not like this, but from my vantage point as a pretty regular user of X, I saw barely any change in the quality of service, despite half the workforce being let go. This added some credence to the criticism that Twitter had become a bloated, inefficient company. If you can fire half of the company and things don't really change all that much, well, something is clearly wrong. But for the critics, well, things were going to get really weird. Oh, and by the way, if you're new around here, my name's Jono, and I've helped hundreds of companies and thousands of people build engaging online and in-person communities with less hassle and better results. But let's get back to the story. You see, around this time, Elon started taking on the persona of an almost cartoonish man of the people. He had complained loudly that social media was an echo chamber and that the voices of many, and when he says many he means conservatives, had been quietened and in some cases hidden. Elon saw himself as a modern-day Robin Hood of sorts, taking back power from the establishment and the elites and opening it up to the masses, and he massively divided people when it came to the role of X in the world. For my liberal friends, they considered X a haven of far-right, racist, misogynistic assholes who just wanted to own the libs and be obnoxious. My conservative friends considered X a place where they could finally have open discussions without some millennial in San Francisco with an absolutely ridiculous hipster mustache shadow banning them just because they disagreed. But who was right in all of this bickering? Well, and this is important for me to say, I'm an independent. I see value in utter idiocy on both sides of the political aisle. And I find the growing trend of having to pick a side politics as, well, frankly, not helpful. So I think I'm probably a bit more objective than most who are evaluating this. So, as is always the case, both sides were kind of right and both sides were kind of wrong. When Elon first took over, the safety wheels of Twitter definitely came off, and there is little doubt that some bad behavior started to bubble up to the surface. Now, Elon's view of this is that the nature of the public town square is that some people are going to say some awful things, and you have to vote with the off button or you have to vote with the block button. But also, there was little doubt in my mind that there was some credibility to the criticism that reasonable, non-hateful conservative voices sharing, admittedly at times frickin' bonkers opinions, were being hidden and getting less visibility on social media platforms. For months, Elon and others have been repeatedly critical about how content and accounts on Twitter were significantly influenced by a clear political ideology by the folks running Twitter.
In order for something to serve as a digital town square, it must serve all people from all political persuasions.
So when he took over Twitter and let that sink in, he put his money where his mouth is. And in an astonishing turn of events, he opened up private internal communications from Twitter to journalists Matt Taibbi, Barry Weiss, Lee Fang, and authors Michael Schellenberger, David Zweig, and Alex Berenson. Taibbi and Weiss published what they found in a series of X threads.
We're, of course, tracking this story. Elon Musk's promised release of internal documents dubbed the Twitter Files details how he says the social media giant operated before he took over. Now, the documents were released via journalist Matt Taibbi's account after Taibbi says that he agreed to unspecified conditions with Musk over their handling.
The findings were, shall we say, not great for the previous Twitter leadership. Evidence of government involvement in content moderation, clear examples of moderation bias, and the targeting of specific accounts was problematic. But there is an important caveat here that has been missing in how people have been discussing this. You see, it's really easy to be overly critical of Twitter during these days, but you have to realize that this was a company that had built a once-in-a-generation new communication platform with hundreds of millions of users, billions of posts, and hundreds of billions of views. Managing all of this signal and noise in a systematic, fair, manageable, and thoughtful way was a, frankly, impossible task. I genuinely believe that the vast majority of Twitter staff had their hearts in the right place, but they made some fundamental mistakes, and they did allow editorial bias to enter into the moderation process way too easily. But not primarily because they were pushing an overt agenda, there was a bit of that going on, but because their philosophy around freedom of speech was radically different to Elon's. Elon was anything and everything, and Twitter was anything and something. Now, although Elon was and continues to be hard-nosed about freedom of speech, it was clear to me he didn't just want to create another version of 4chan where anything goes. And there were two features he focused on to bring some semblance of order to the public town square. Firstly, X radically changed the requirements for creating new accounts. For months, Twitter had been plagued with automated bots, so Elon shook things up by requiring extended verification of new accounts and also created a variety of verified statuses for individuals, businesses, and more. This was table stakes to ensure humans were actually talking to humans, and this was overall a sensible set of changes. Secondly, Elon and his team dug in deep with community notes, previously known as Birdwatch. This is a feature that allows users to add context to posts to fight misinformation through the crowdsourcing of fact-checking. Community notes are designed to add context to potentially misleading posts. The notes are rated by other users for accuracy and helpfulness before they become visible. Now, in my mind, this was a pretty big deal. When you've got a public town square, accuracy of information is absolutely essential, and community notes is a pretty neat way of solving this problem. But there is a challenge with this strategy. The sheer fire hose of X posts operate at a much faster clip than community notes can deal with. As such, for posts of significant public interest, such as by celebrities or politicians, they'll often get community noted eventually, but most posts do not attract community notes. And because most X posts have a fairly short burst of attention, by the time community notes are in place for those posts, well, no one cares about that particular post anymore anyway. Still, this is an important feature, and I hope Elon and his team continue to iterate and improve it, especially with their work in AI, which could rapidly speed up source-based fact-checking. Now, do you know what's also important to know? Well, for YouTubers such as myself who want to get more visibility in our videos, a simple like really helps a whole load. So if you're enjoying this video, please click on that little like button. It'll mean the world to me and really help the channel out. Now, part of the reason why verification and community notes were so important was not just to ensure that high quality discussion was happening on X, but also to enable X to be able to, actually make some money. You see, Elon's acquisition had a profound impact on advertisers who were a major source of revenue for Twitter. When he first took over, a lot of advertisers left the platform, for some due to content moderation and brand safety concerns, and this eventually caused Twitter's global ad revenue to drop by 50% in April 2023.
It is unclear what time frame Musk was referring to by the 50% drop in ad revenue, but since he took over, Twitter has been criticised for lax content moderation, leading to an exodus of many advertisers who did not want their ads appearing next to inappropriate content.
Some advertisers were also pretty unimpressed with how Elon himself was engaging on the platform, although it's difficult to objectively determine how much this played a role. Now, it's really important to consider all of this with some objective historical context. Even before Elon took over Twitter, advertising on Twitter sucked. Ads just generally didn't perform very well on Twitter compared to other platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Google. This was mainly due to poor targeting, limited user metadata, and lower quality conversion tracking. This was a serious problem for X, and new CEO Linda Yaccarino, who came from an advertising background, needed to correct course on this. New features such as additional ad formats, more control over ad placement, increased focus on video, and more helped, but X still really struggles to be a place where advertisers choose to spend their ad budgets. So lots was happening, but X also needed a bit of a spring clean when it came to the overall experience and features for its users. You see, Twitter previously was an absolute mess when it came to delivering features. It took them forever to deliver even the most basic of features, and they rarely delivered anything particularly interesting, which was maddening. Twitter had become enormously popular, which they could have parlayed into exciting new ways to collaborate and share, but they just kind of sat on their hands, seemingly scared to rock the boat too much. The Elon era charted a way different path by shipping quickly and decisively. They extended the character limit for tweets, they introduced long-form articles, they extended video upload time, they delivered new verification features, they added new subscription models so creators could make money, and a whole lot more. And all of this made the X platform feel much fresher and more useful. And lest we not forget, they deliver this with half the employees. But the major question is, has any of this been worth it? Has the impact of Elon taking over Twitter improved or degraded the overall value of X? Not for the hardcore X fanatics who worship at the Church of Musk or for the Mastodon using X haters, but what about just most people like us? Well, 4 thoughts here. Firstly, from a usefulness perspective, X is pretty great. When a major news event happens, such as the assassination attempt of Donald Trump, the news networks lagged behind significantly in reporting. X, though, had a battalion of armchair journalists sharing news, updates, and analysis, and X became the de facto place where many people stayed up to date on the topic, including myself. But there's a double-edged sword here. And as I will come back to later on, just because there's an unmatched speed and dissemination of information benefit on X, it doesn't mean that there's an accuracy benefit, but we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Now, secondly, there is little doubt that from a features and capabilities perspective, X is way better since Elon took over. It provides a much richer, more interesting experience for users, it's fast and generally reliable, it's got better support for video, and is overall pretty pleasant to use. Thirdly, it provides a better platform for supporting creators, but with an important caveat. The broader focus on video and different ways of monetizing posts and content is great, but the problem is that it just hasn't really caught on with most creators yet. I mean, really, who on earth wants to pay for X posts? YouTube and Substack are still beating the pants off X for creators. And fourthly, from a free speech perspective, X is undeniably better than Twitter, but there are significant strings attached. You see, Elon's goal of creating a public town square has largely been accomplished on X, with a truly broad variety of perspectives, opinions, and ideas, especially when major news events occur. I think the diversity of perspectives on X is far greater than I see in other social media platforms. But here is the important point to remember. People can be amazing, inspirational, and insightful, but they can also be obnoxious, condescending, and mean-spirited. So when you truly embrace free speech, you let all voices into the town square, including some pretty antisocial voices. Now, by the way, if you're looking to build a thriving audience of fans around your own business, and without the antisocial voices, you should absolutely check out our Community Leadership Core Accelerator. We provide one-on-one coaching and accountability tailored directly to you and your company, helping you to work faster and smarter and generate measurable community engagement and growth every single month. Check out the link down there where you can find out more. Okay, so the X story is fascinating, but what lessons, insights, and learnings can you apply in your own world? Well, I've got 3 important takeaways I want to share. Firstly, always have an opinionated vision. Part of the reason Twitter was such a mess before Elon took over was that there was clearly very little opinionated leadership. The sheer lack of feature delivery, despite Twitter becoming a major new way in which human beings communicated, was in my mind a clear failing in Twitter's leadership. When Elon came in, he knew exactly what he wanted to do, not just from a product perspective, moving towards his everything app vision, but also from a branding, staffing, resourcing, and policy perspective. Now, you may disagree with Elon's opinionated vision, and that is perfectly fair game. And you may also disagree with his own X post, which is certainly fair game. But putting that to one side, it's undeniable that he turned this big sinking ship around and made it more useful, dynamic, and, well, exciting. We need to do the same in our own work. Inspire yourself and those who you work with around a clear vision of what you could ultimately achieve, and then get out there and build it, driven by what is possible, and not by the fear of making mistakes or rocking the boat. And mistakes leads to our second takeaway: gather rapid feedback and iterate quickly. Part of the reason why Twitter previously failed is that they fell into the trap of perfectionism, and what appeared from the outside to be consensus-based decision-making. They spun their wheels way too much internally, and this meant that they shipped fewer features, and you never ever got the feeling that as a Twitter user you could really influence or play a role in the roadmap. X was the opposite. Musk made it clear that the X community could play a role in building all of this together. They shipped features quickly and visibly, testing new ideas and not being precious if they didn't work. sometimes these features bombed hard, such as the disastrous Ron DeSantis live X Spaces chat when just everything went wrong. And sure, we can poke fun at the disaster, but I admire the fact that they gave it a go. This is the only way to innovate. We need to do the same in our own work. When we launched the Community Leadership Core in our very first session with our first customers, I told them that I was really proud of what we'd built, but it would be nowhere near as good as it will be in 6 months. But only if our members played a role in helping us to shape it to be the best that it could be for them, with their blunt feedback. And our very best and most popular changes came from the mouths and keyboards of our members. Building out in the open is the best way to build, even though it can bring the critics. And this leads us to our third key takeaway. Ignore the critics. They just don't matter. Let's be real, Elon Musk is an incredibly divisive figure. Some people love him and some people can't stand him. And I sympathize with both sides. While I think Elon is one of our generation's most incredible and productive minds, he can say some wacky shit and often strays way too far into the world of bizarre fringe conspiracy theories. But when you're building something, such as your business, your community, or your audience, you cannot get dragged down by the haters. They don't deserve the airtime in your brain. But it's also super critical that you don't close your eyes off to uncomfortable but potentially really helpful feedback. But how do you strike the right balance of this? Well, it's actually pretty simple. You evaluate both, 1, how the words are said, and 2, where the words come from. If someone criticizes you or your work and it's expressed in a rude or inflammatory way, ignore it. If they're not going to be constructive and polite in how they criticize you or your work, they're not worth your time and energy. But if they provide really uncomfortable, blunt, and pointed feedback, but it's constructive and courteous, you should absolutely listen to it, with one key caveat: if they're your target audience. One of the worst things that you can do is listen to even constructive feedback from people you are not there to serve. It will send you down a pathway of distraction, building things, testing things, and engaging in discussions that have got little benefit to your target audience or to you. So let's pull this into the finish line. Based on everything we've talked about today, what is my overall conclusion on X? Well, I do think X is a pretty great platform, and overall it's been much better since Elon took over, but I do have some criticisms. Now, I do think it serves its users better. I think it's better for creators, I think it's better for advertisers, I think it's got way fewer bots and scam accounts, and it welcomes a broader set of voices. And it's also stayed pretty relevant and useful since Elon took over as well. But it isn't perfect, and there's plenty of room for improvements. X is filled to the gills with low quality, low signal junk. It's become a bit of an echo chamber for conspiracy nuts, and it is rife with misinformation. It also hasn't really hit its stride as a compelling platform for creators, and it's still a pretty uninspiring platform when it comes to advertising. But here's the thing, I like the fact that they had a bold vision and moved towards it. And I do have faith that they'll chip away at it and improve the deficits that they currently have in X. And speaking of social media, I'm going to assume the fact that you watched this video means that you yourself want to do social media well. You want to post great stuff on X and Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and elsewhere. But coming up with interesting ideas and posting regularly is really, really hard. But if you click on this video, I have a step-by-step guide where I'll show you how to create a whole month's worth of social media content in about 3 or 4 hours. It takes all the stress and complexity out of it. It means that you can get everything scheduled and you don't have to worry about social media for a whole month. So click on that video, go check it out, and I'll see you there.